Welcome to Meet My Mutual with Sarah and Ava. Pour some wine, light a joint, or don't, and meet my mutual.
Hello, everybody. Happy New Year.
Yeah, welcome back to Meet My Mutual.
This is what we're officially calling season 2 now.
Yeah, we'll see how long the seasons last and how that works out.
Yeah, exactly. And we started what, in November?
We recorded our first episode in October, but we didn't post it till November.
Okay, yeah, November. So we had like 2 full months of episodes, and we just felt like we ended on a really high note with like the guests that we had and hitting certain download goals. So we concluded that as season 1, and now hopefully 2021 brings better things than it already has, and this will be a season 2.
Yeah,
even though
we're going to make this intro really short and just get right to the interview. We're talking to Molly Mulshine today of Diva Behavior Podcast, and she's a journalist and a comedian, and she's hilarious. So it's a really good episode.
It really is. She's so funny. So sit back, pour some wine,
light a joint,
and meet my mutual.
Bye. So we have Molly Mulshine. If you want to introduce yourself, please.
Hey, everyone. I'm Molly Mulshine. I'm a comic, podcaster, and writer. I think that's everything I am. I'm a presenter as well. I guess that's what we call it in the UK. I am from the US. I was born in Philly, grew up on the Jersey Shore. I lived in New York for a while, and now I live in London.
Can you tell us about your journey with social media? I just want to get to know kind of how you started your first social platform and where it's taken you.
Okay, so I guess my first social platform in the loosest sense of the word was AOL. So yes, I had dial-up AOL. I was really into coding my profile. This is what's crazy is my generation, we actually had to learn HTML if we wanted to have a personal brand. So I would do that all the time. And then I guess my first social platform in the more modern sense was MySpace. So I had a MySpace. I loved it. I learned some of my best detective work by trying to find people on MySpace because it was a lot harder. There was no algorithm for people you may know. So you really had to dig. And so now, true. Yeah. And now I'm on everything. It's terrible.
Yeah. I saw that you were trying to do a social media cleanse. How's that going?
Oh my God, it was so bad. I mean, I knew it wasn't going to last because for the writing job that I do, I have to be on social media every day. So I said to myself, maybe for the first 3 days of 2021, I won't look at social. And then for the rest of the month, I'll only look during work hours. And it worked. But I mean, the thing is, previous times when I've done a social media cleanse, I've also been socializing in real life. So it feels like a really creatively rich time because I'm talking to people and I'm doing things and I'm like, oh, I'm thinking of ideas. But in lockdown, it's just, there's nothing to replace the scrolling. So I was just like, okay, I have not thought of any new ideas. This has not really enriched me at all. I finished a New York Times Sunday crossword puzzle for the first time ever, but that was pretty much it. So
that's a big accomplishment though.
It is.
Thank you.
Yeah. How do you even avoid social media when you really kind of need it to perform for your job? Like you said, your podcast, stand-up writing, can you?
Yeah, I really can't. And even the first day I came back on social, I got asked to be on your podcast and another podcast. And I'm like, okay, if I wasn't back reading my DMs, I would have missed both of those. If I really did a month-long social media cleanse, I would have missed them. I have 2 new jobs coming up, actually 2 jobs and an unpaid project that I found all through Facebook, postings in Facebook groups. So I'm just dying to get off of these platforms and I can't because my work literally depends on it. So my big goal for this year is just less scrolling more creating content, because I think the big issue that I have is I have a stand-up joke about this, about how when you're watching TV, you know that you're like a piece of garbage, but when you're scrolling through Instagram for hours, you're like, oh, I'm working. Like I'm finding inspiration. I'm learning, I'm building a personal brand. And it's like, no, you're just getting brain worms. Like you're literally just killing brain cells sitting here. So that's my big goal this year, is just stop the aimless scrolling and focus more on unplugging from social media and coming up with concepts and creative ideas and then posting them on social media. Like use it more as a tool and less as, you know, like a quaalude. That just turns off all of your motor functions. I don't know.
That is so funny. I know. I feel like I'm always on. I'm like, oh, I'm working because I'm looking, because like I work in casting, and I'll be like, oh, well, I'm looking at models, so that means that I'm working. It's like, no, you're just looking at their outfit, Ava. Like, come on.
Yeah, exactly. It almost like I have this new thing that I've been telling myself, that social media is a MLM. It's a pyramid scheme. And I'm at the bottom rung because I don't really have that many followers. Like I have combined like 6,000 or 7,000, which is nothing in the grand scheme of things. But I've still bought into this idea that if I work harder at social media, I'll get more followers and I'll get work out of that. And it's just like, no, like I've been on this shit since 2004 and I'm not a Twitter celebrity. So like it's not going to happen.
Right? Not yet, Molly. Not yet.
No, not yet. Yeah. I think the thing for me is like my work is best when it's long form, like when I'm writing longer things. Like I'm not that good at tweeting. Like I've had I do have some like success on Twitter, but not a lot. And the more time I spend on social media, the more time it takes away from those long form projects. But for some reason, I still have it in my head that like fame is just around the corner.
Don't we all?
Clearly that ship has sailed and it's time to put effort into other things, you know?
I mean, it's a great goal, but 2021 has not made it easy for us to stop the doom scrolling. Like,
right.
You're not alone.
Yeah, I was just telling Sarah earlier, I saw a tweet that said, I'm not doom scrolling, I just live in hell. And like, which is just so true. Like every type of scrolling is now doom scrolling because it's just so shitty. But like,
yeah, like, and also it's cathartic when something insane is going on. Like when Trump caught COVID, I was like, I need to see every meme about this. I need to see them all. It makes me feel better.
I need to see like what like people who are funnier than me have to say about this, because it's less funny in my own head at the moment.
Twitter is the best for that because you like really get real time news and then just like amazing, hilarious commentary on top of it. It's like it is cathartic.
Everyone complains about Twitter, and I do too, but it also is so good sometimes. It's just so good, you know? And on my podcast, we were talking about WAGs this week. Do you know WAGs, like football players' wives and girlfriends in the UK?
I know that now because of your story.
Oh yeah,
what is this?
So we were talking about how, actually, I don't even know if we got into this, but in my research for it, I was looking at how all of the feuds in the 2000s took place on Twitter and not on Instagram, like the celebrity feuds. And they were so much more entertaining because it wasn't like a shady comment or an emoji. It was like a full sentence explaining like why I think this person's a bitch. And it was just like so much messier and so much funnier. And like, I don't know, I think Twitter is mind numbing, but it also has because I like Instagram because obviously photos are a great medium too, but they just don't pack the same punch as like actually writing your thoughts.
I know. The first thing that came to mind was when Kendall Jenner tweeted about like hoping Rihanna would play some song or something. And Rihanna was just like, then don't come.
Yeah. Yeah. Like that doesn't happen on Instagram.
No.
Right.
And everyone has gotten so curated now, and everyone's trying to like put their best foot forward on Instagram, whereas on Twitter everyone is being their worst self, I feel like.
It's so messy. It's like messy, but in the best way. Yeah.
It's more relatable. Like I don't know. I don't feel as inadequate when I scroll through Twitter as I do when I scroll through Instagram, I guess.
Me too.
We can transition now to your stand-up career. Did you always see yourself being on stage? Like, when did you decide I'm going to do stand-up?
So I definitely always loved performing, like from the time I was born, basically. We have a video of my ballet class when I was like 3 or 4 years old, and I'm just taking over the entire class and running around like a psycho trying to make everyone laugh and just like acting a fool and just being ridiculous. But so I always loved performing. I did theater in high school and everything, but I never really gave myself a chance to be an actor or anything, because when I was younger, and this is going to sound like a pity party, but it's the truth. Like when I was younger, I just thought I was too ugly to ever be an actor. So I was like, I
think we all feel that way.
Yeah. So I have a memory of like my mom was driving the car and I was just sitting in the front seat, like pretending to be the main character and thinking like, I know, I'll be funny. Like if I can learn how to be funny, then I can maybe be a performer in some way. Mm-hmm. So I was really into like I Love Lucy. I wanted to be like a comedic actor, but I didn't know how to do that. And I was always really into writing from the time I was really little. And then I think when I was in college was the first time that I was like, wait, stand-up is performing and writing. Like that's perfect. So I should try that. But I said to my boyfriend at the time, hey, I think I want to try stand-up. Wouldn't that be fun? And he was like, but you're not funny.
Maybe he just had bad taste in humor. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was also like, we laugh together all the time. Like, how could I not be funny? Like, what do you mean? So that like put a damper on it, which is messed up. I should have dumped him, but I kept dating him. And then I didn't think about it again until in 2012, this book came out called We Killed, and it's an oral history of women in stand-up. And it's by this writer named Yael Cohen. And I recommend it to anyone because it starts from the very beginning with like Phyllis Diller, Joan Rivers, and it goes all the way up to like the present day. And it just really made it feel more possible for me. And it made me, it goes through like, this is how someone comes up with a set. And it goes through saying like, you're probably going to bomb a lot when you first start. It takes 10 years to really get good. Like it's a slog. It takes a long time. So that book really just made me understand that one, it's possible. I think anyone who worked hard enough at it would be able to figure out how to do stand up, which like sounds crazy, but there are so many people who you meet who are good at stand up and they're not even really like funny in a conversation. So it just made me realize that it's a skill that you can build, and it just kind of made me want to give it a shot. So I think I started in 2012. No, that can't. Wow. It must have been 2013 or 2014 because I think I've only been doing it for like 6 or 7 years. But yeah, I started in New Jersey at the Stress Factory in New Brunswick, and then I didn't do it for a while because I lived in New Jersey. Then when I moved to New York, I started being able to do it more because there's so many open mics in New York. Like I would be able to get up on stage 3 times a night if I really wanted to. So that was the best. Like anyone who wants to do stand up, I think being in New York or LA is the best thing for it because you can just get so much stage time. And then now I guess at the point where I'm getting booked on before the pandemic, I was getting booked on real shows. I was going to do a 1-woman show at Edinburgh Fringe Festival. I was so excited about that. And now I have performed twice in the past 10 months. So
right.
You're performing right now. So that's
right. That's what I've been like focusing on podcasting a lot more because I'm just like, I can't do Zoom shows. They're a nightmare. It's terrible. No one likes it. I don't understand. Like it just doesn't scratch the itch. It doesn't help you really get better. So yeah.
Yeah.
So here we are.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast and this comedian was saying that like he hates doing the Zoom shows because you can't hear laughter.
Right.
He's like, how am I supposed to feed off of like the energy of a fucking Zoom show? Like there is none.
And
I've watched some of those too, and I feel the same way. Like without the audience, they're just the jokes don't hit. Like they're not funny.
Yeah, it doesn't hit. And also a lot of my material is dark and kind of like offensive and satirical. So it's like I don't want there to be a record of me saying it without a laugh track because then I just sound like an asshole. Do you know what I mean?
That's so
I just need it. Like if it's the same issue with like sometimes tweeting jokes. It's like if you tweet a joke that's sort of a darker joke, sometimes people get really offended by it because it's in a news feed with really serious things. So people aren't primed for a joke. So they're like, wait, why is this person making light of a serious situation? And it's like, well, because that's their sense of humor and maybe it's not yours, but it's just a recipe for disaster to take the comedy out of the comedy framework and put it into the entire internet. I feel like sometimes, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like I might follow you and like retweet something, but whoever follows me is now being like, wait a second.
Right. Like
that
they
is
might not
so
be
out of
in
context. Yeah.
Yeah, like even when the whole like coup was going on last night,
That's a
I
sentence.
yeah, I was like tweeting jokes about it, and I was kind of like, I mean, I was tweeting jokes about it only after I found out that these guys were just morons that were walking around in circles inside the Capitol building. You know what I mean? Like for the first few minutes when I was like, holy shit, what's happening? I wasn't like, you know, but then after that, like I was tweeting jokes about it, and I was like, some people might be offended that I'm kind of like, I guess, making light of a serious situation, but also like I'm a comic and like I'm blowing off steam, and other
This is how you
people,
cope.
yeah, exactly. It makes other people feel better too. So it's like, you know, but then there are other times when I do that with serious stuff that I think twice about it. Like yesterday before the coup, when the big news was the Georgia runoffs, and like someone had tweeted, you know, this is going to be the first time in a really long time that all three branches of not all three branches of the government, but that both houses of Congress and the president are all going to be Democrats. And like, I quote tweeted it, and I was like, if my student loans aren't dust in the wind by March 1st, I'm going to be so pissed. And like, first I had that tweet up because like, yeah, I will be pissed. But then I also was like, you know what? Like, this is a really big day for Georgia, and it's a really big day, especially for the Black community. And like, my student loans are not a real issue. Like, yeah, it sucks for me, but like, this is a much more important day. Right. So I ended up like deleting that tweet because I was like, okay, I look a little bit cunty saying that, you know?
Okay, Ivanka. I'm just kidding. I can't believe she deleted that tweet. But
I know. I always dirty delete. I dirty delete everything. I'm sorry. I used to have a thing where I was like, I'm leaving all my tweets up. And then I was just like, why would I leave all my tweets up? Like, so many of them are stupid. I'm God. Just like, I delete them. If they don't get a fave in 5 minutes, I delete it.
Especially if you plan on being Twitter famous. Those will come back to haunt you. Yeah.
Yeah. There are some of mine on the way back machine from back in the day, and I had one where I said that I didn't like Rihanna, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be what cancels me. You know,
regrets.
Yeah, I will never. You know, I'll get one job in Hollywood, and then someone will find my Rihanna tweet, and I'll never work in this town again.
That's amazing. Fingers crossed that does not happen.
Besides, like, you know, the shit show that is the pandemic this year, what has been the most challenging part for you breaking into the comedy world and like just the whole process of that?
I think it's just keeping up the momentum to actually get decent at it, because it does take a really long time. Like, I think it's true for a lot of people. The first time you ever get up and perform, you know, the MC will say, oh, and now it's this comic. We're hearing that it's this comic's first time ever performing. So everyone's really nice and they laugh at all your jokes. And then for most people, myself included, you then just go through like several years of pretty much bombing and like never ever really getting a laugh, like getting a couple laughs once in a while, but feeling like you're just not good at it. And it took me so long. Like the first time I ever performed in New York, actually, I did well. And that was only like a year or two into doing comedy. And I got booked on a show after that. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I've gotten booked on this show. It's so cool. So I invited all my friends and they all came, and I completely bombed at the show. Like I just got like one laugh. Like even my friends weren't laughing. And I was like, this is terrible. So it's just kind of like, that's what's hard about it, is knowing that like, if you keep working on it, you'll get better. But also even when you are really good, you're still going to bomb once in a while, you know?
I was just going to say, like, is it like nerves that make you bomb, or is it just like, oh, like those jokes just were not working?
Yeah, it can be just that the audience isn't like vibing with you sometimes, you know? Like I could do an identical set at two different crowds, and one it might kill and the other one I might bomb, you know? Right. And I think that's why like stand-up is the one area of entertainment where there are no nepotism success stories, because it's too hard to get good. Like you can't just have a famous dad and go into stand up, you know, it's just not going to happen. And like you have nepotism musicians, nepotism actors, because like it's not that those things aren't hard, it's just that it doesn't require as much time. So
nepotism politicians.
yeah, exactly. Like it doesn't matter with stand up like how many people know who you are, you still have to know what you're doing.
Yeah, like you have to be funny. That's like
yeah.
The whole thing, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
What's been like the craziest or funniest thing that's happened at a set that you've either like been in or just like were in the audience?
The only thing I can think of is one time I was at an open mic in New York in like the East Village at the Beauty Bar. Is that place still open, Beauty Bar?
I don't know. I don't know about during the pandemic.
Yeah. Well, I loved it. They had a little like back room with glitter all over the walls. It was so cute. But anyway, I was doing a mic there and I performed and like did my thing. And then the guy who got up after me was like a real weirdo, like school shooter vibes. And he was like, he just started saying he wanted to rape me. Like that was supposed to be his joke. He was like, oh, like you. And he pointed at me and he was like, I would really like to like rape you and figure out like what that's like. And like
was it
normally
supposed to be funny? Like, did people laugh?
Wait, I think I saw the same guy because I went to a show last winter before the pandemic started and a guy made a very similar joke. And I was just like, this is not funny. And he like called me out for not laughing. I'm like, I'm not laughing at your rape joke. Sorry.
Yeah, like it's not funny at all. And it was really weird. But the other thing is like that happens a lot at open mics. Like when you're first starting out, like the first mic I ever did at the Stress Factory, after I got off stage, the MC talked about like fantasizing about having sex with me and like going down on me. And I still remember his name and like I'm keeping it in my files. You know what I mean? Like if I ever do get successful so that I can not give him any like time of day. But yeah, so it happens all the time. And I didn't really think anything of it. Like I wasn't even offended by it because I'm just like, this guy's an idiot and he's trying to be funny and clearly no one's laughing and that's his punishment and that's good enough. But it was a couple weeks after the whole Harvey Weinstein thing broke. So the MCs of the comedy show actually told him that he could never come back.
Good.
And that was really cool. I couldn't believe it.
Read the room, bro. Like,
yeah. It was crazy because normally, like I said, that kind of thing would be, I mean, he wasn't funny, so no one laughed, but normally it would just be like, oh, that guy was weird. But it was because of that, like, and at the time I felt really jaded about it. Like the fact that the guys actually stood up for me. I was like, oh, what? They think I can't take it. Like I've had that kind of shit happening ever since I started doing comedy. Like there's always guys saying disgusting things. Like I can handle it. But now I feel a lot more, appreciative that they did that. I appreciated it at the time too, obviously, but I just was like, I can't believe anyone thinks this is like a rare thing because it's happened to me so many times, you know?
Well, I think it probably goes back to like what you were saying with kind of Twitter comedy not always hitting, where in comedy, everybody sort of has a different sense of humor and thing that they think is funny. So for many years, that kind of sexist, shitty behavior was kind of looked over because it was like, oh, well, that's their joke. And then all this shit happened and we kind of hit this hard line where we're like, no, like we cannot stand for that anymore. So don't feel like jaded or ashamed by that. That's just gross. It's not your fault.
Yeah. I also feel like I had to have a moment of being like, okay, things have sucked for people in so many ways and now they don't have to anymore, instead of just resigning myself to the suckage. Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
Like I am allowed to say, shut the fuck up, you're being an asshole, to someone who's being an asshole. I don't have to just be like, well, I have to prove that I can take it because that's the industry, you know? So that's, I guess that's the takeaway from that. That's probably the craziest thing that's happened to me at a show, I guess.
Yeah, that is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like, it gave me chills. It's gross.
Yeah.
So you were talking about this book. I forget, what was the title of the book that you said you read? We Killed. And you said that it like kind of set the foundation for teaching you how to create a set and like how to get started. And I just totally don't know anything about this world. Can you like tell me like how do you find inspiration for your set, or like how does comedy typically come to you? Like, do you scroll through social media and find inspiration there, or is it something else?
That's my problem, is I think I'm finding inspiration and I'm not. I'm just losing brain cells. But the best places where I find inspiration for comedy is just talking to people and seeing what comes up in conversation, and then kind of like,
Ooh, that's cool.
I'll just like, I'll say something, especially when I'm talking to my family, because my family is like hilarious, which I didn't even know until I started meeting other people's family, how funny my family is. But
you're like, wow, your family's really boring.
Yeah. But I just like, my whole family is like roasting each other all the time. And like, we talk about everything. Like, we literally talk about absolutely everything. There is no topic that's off the table. So whenever I'm in a conversation with my mom or my dad or my sister, I'm like, just the things that come up will like kind of make a seed in my head that will become a bit, and just anything that's kind of bothering me about the world. My comedy is more social commentary, I would say. It's not so like, a lot of comics talk a lot about themselves or their upbringing. I don't really do that much of that. It's more talking about like society. So it's basically just taking whatever is bugging me about society at the moment and turning it into bits. And I used to do more, like in the beginning, I would do more like sex and dating stuff, but I haven't really been doing, I kind of stopped doing sex stuff because I stopped a while ago. And it was pre-Me Too. And I think I stopped because I would talk about it, and then it would make all the other comics who went up after me sort of sexualize me and build off of it as like talking about me in a way that I didn't appreciate, like that rape joke guy.
Yeah.
So I kind of stopped, but I also just think it's like not that. And I think a lot of people already talk about it. So I just don't really talk about it that much.
That goes into my next question though. Like, has your taste in comedy changed, especially since the pandemic?
Not really. I've always really liked like social commentary. I've always had like a dark sense of humor. I definitely am not like easily offended. I try not to say things that offend people unless it's like a really good joke. Because that's like what my bar is. I'm like, okay, if it's a smart joke and I can see what they were going for, like, it's funny. Even if people would consider it sexist, I'll just be like, okay, like that was a good joke, you know? Because you can tell sometimes it's satire. Like, they're making fun of sexism itself. They're not actually like being sexist. So yeah, I guess my taste in comedy has always been kind of the same. I've been trying to get more into like alt comedy because I've never really been that into alt comedy.
What is alt comedy?
So there's no like real concrete definition, but basically most people feel that there's two types of comics. There's club comics and alt comics. And the club ones are the ones that you would see at like the Comedy Cellar and Caroline's and places like that. And then the alt ones are the ones that are at like the Knitting Factory, and they're a little bit more experimental, maybe like not so much structured. Well, they'll still have structured jokes, but like usually a little bit less offensive, more silly, I guess. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but I've definitely been trying to get more into that because I also, you know, when you're doing comedy, you try on like different personas until you find what hits. And it's weird because like when I was first starting out, I definitely tried a little bit to do like the deadpan Aubrey Plaza thing. And I very quickly was like, this is not me at all. Like, I am not pulling this off ever.
You're like the anti-Aubrey.
I know. And so like that was something I had to like learn through trial and error, I guess. But yeah, I guess I pretty much always have the same taste, I think. I don't know.
Consistency.
That social commentary comedy is like so cathartic though. Like you just need that.
Yeah. Especially this year. Like
I know. And it's getting harder because I think, well, it was hard during the Trump years, which like God willing are going to end in a couple weeks. But like the hard thing with Trump is that he's beyond satire because he's such an idiot that you literally you can't even really mock him because he's already sort of mocking himself.
It's too easy. Like, yeah.
SNL
did it and now it's over.
Yeah, exactly. It's so weird.
It's crazy. What do you wish that you knew before starting stand-up besides that you're not too ugly to do it.
No one is too ugly for stand-up.
No.
But I guess what I wish I knew, I just wish I kind of stumbled on my own style sooner, because it does take work. My first set, I told a story about getting braces and going to my cousin's bat mitzvah that weekend. And I'm just like, why did I even try that? That's so dumb. And like, I can still picture in my head, like looking out at the crowd. And I was wearing Litas. I was wearing Jeffrey Campbell Litas. Yeah. Remember those shoes? Yeah. And I just remember looking at the crowd and being like, this isn't working at all. Like, I don't know. I just like, I'm not a storyteller comedian. Like, I just wish I learned my own style sooner, I think. And I wish I started a podcast sooner because damn, people who started like 5 years ago are really killing it now.
I know.
Yeah, they really got a jump start on everything.
Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned a few already, like Joan Rivers, but who are some female comedians that you look up to?
So yeah, definitely Joan Rivers. I miss her so much. She was like the queen, her and Phyllis Diller. They were both really different, but I loved Joan. I really think I miss her era a lot too, because you were allowed to make fun of celebrities, and now we're getting to this really strange place where making fun of the most beautiful, rich people in the world is considered bullying. And I'm just like, I don't know if that's how bullying works. So yeah, I hope is a trend that ends soon, because like, having one person who's a nobody say something nasty about you when you're like that big of a success is not bullying. And I think it was great when celebrities knew how to take a joke. Like Elizabeth Taylor, Joan Rivers made fun of her all the time, and she loved it because she was like, this keeps me relevant. Like if Joan Rivers stops talking about me, that's when we have a problem. And it's just like people not really understanding the nature of fame. Like being famous doesn't mean that everyone likes you. It means everyone knows who you are. And if you don't ever have any controversies or bumps in the road, you're not going to be famous for very long. But so yeah, Joan Rivers, I love everything she did go too far sometimes, obviously. And some of the stuff she said, when you look back on it now, especially, you're like, holy shit. But, she was just a great joke writer and everything. I love Natasha Leggero. Do you guys know who she is?
I don't. No.
She's like so funny, and she's she's like my idol in terms of like women who are working today, because she does a really good. When I first started doing stand-up, I think there was a huge trend of women being really self-deprecating, talking like, I'm so ugly, I'm so fat, blah, 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 which I hate. I think it's so boring. And she never did that at the time, and she never does it now. And she just doesn't ever go into this place of like turning herself into the joke, I guess. She just writes really well-crafted, funny jokes about everything without being like, look at what a loser I am, which is something that, female comedians a lot of the time feel a lot of pressure to do, because so many men are just terrified of women. So you sort of have to take the piss out of yourself. You have to take the air out of your tires and be like, don't worry, I have pubes, you know what I mean? Right. So men will like relax and laugh at what you have to say, but she never does that. And that's what I really appreciate about her. And she's just so funny. She has what you could watch on Netflix is the Honeymoon Special. That's her and her husband. They just did it a couple of years ago. You guys will die. Like I feel like you'll love her. She's so good. I wish she was bigger because she's amazing. Who else do I really like? It's hard because nothing new is coming out. I want to shout out my friend Sarah Armour, because she was at that first show I did in New York where I bombed, and she still wanted to be friends with me. And she's really awesome because she's hilarious. She's truly one of the funniest people. Every time I see her perform, I die. But she's also really into astrology, and she has this thing called the Moonual, where she does sort of like life coaching and astrology stuff wrapped up with comedy. So everyone who's into astrology should check her out, because
I will.
She's great. Yeah, she's one to watch, I would say.
That sounds awesome. That's like right up my alley.
Yeah.
Well, transitioning a little bit back to podcasts. You are a host of an amazing podcast called Diva Behavior. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about it?
Sure. So Diva Behavior is a podcast about why women are called divas when they're in the public eye, and just kind of analyzing that. But I'm also extrapolating it out a little bit more to just be a general pop culture podcast. But the main focus is, why do we call women divas? And what do all the women who we call divas have in common? So I guess that's the gist.
Yeah. So like, how did you come up with that concept? And was there a diva that like started it all for you?
So what started it was, I went to film school a couple years ago. I studied screenwriting, and we were talking about different archetypes of stories one day, and there was the hero's journey, which is like the Odyssey, and a lot of old ancient stories use this, and some modern things. It's just a template of a story, and it's like there's a call to action. There's a wise older figure who is giving you advice. Like Star Wars follows it, Lord of the Rings follows it. And it was like one of my favorite archetypes because there's so much you can do with it, but it was very male focused. So I was like, I wonder if there's a female version of the hero's journey. And I looked it up, and it was like I don't know if it was called the heroine's journey or what, but someone did make up one once, and all it had to do with was like dealing with adversity. There was nothing really active about it. It was like, oh, women are so like victimized and put upon, and they have to get out of their victim place. And I just hate that mindset. So I was like, I've always been a huge fan of celebrity memoirs and biographies. And I had always noticed patterns in each woman's, like a lot of famous women, they have a lot in common, and no one ever really talks about it. So I wanted to come up with what was like the archetypal diva's journey, like a woman who becomes really famous and is controversial. What do all of those women have in common? So that was kind of what made me want to do diva behavior. And they do have a lot in common. It's really crazy. It's awesome. So crazy how we have these like archetypes for women in society and how they fit such a mold,
Oh, it's true. Yeah. It's like the Medusa idea that like she only became this evil person, or to some women like a heroine, because of adversity. But now I have Beyonce stuck in my head, so thanks for that. A diva. What qualifies somebody like on your show? What qualifies them to be a quote unquote diva?
So it has to be someone who's controversial, who's had a moment where like the general public sort of turned against her, and a lot of the time it's someone who gets accused of being above her station in life. So there is like a level of intersectionality to who gets called a diva. Like if you are a woman of color, or if you're a working class woman, you're much more likely to be called a diva because society wants to keep you down. So like the way that I explain who's a diva and who's not, the best way to understand it is look at the British royal family. No one ever calls the queen a diva, even though she lives in castles and she's got a million servants, and she's probably really demanding because people feel like she was born to that and she deserves it. And nobody calls Kate Middleton a diva because she also stays in her lane. She barely speaks, and she doesn't ever rock the boat. She doesn't ever do anything controversial. Then meanwhile, you have Princess Diana and Meghan Markle, who are accused all the time of being demanding, of being divas. And that's because they had, the gall to say, I don't think this situation is working for me, and I want to question it a little bit. So it's basically any woman in the public eye who people are accusing of getting above herself, if that makes sense. And it happens all the time, and it never happens to men. The only time it happens to men is men of color, and it's usually athletes. Like I have a Google alert on the phrase diva behavior, and it only ever comes up in reference to men for male athletes who are being accused of being divas. And it's, again, like working class men of color who have got a lot of money, and people just get pissed off about that. So they try to think of a reason why they can be pissed off at them. And they're like, oh, well, they're being demanding, they're being divas. So it's just this really weird way that we try to keep people in the place that we've deemed acceptable for them in the world.
That is pretty so fucking interesting. Yeah. And your podcast is really great. Everyone needs to listen to it. Yeah, I can't speak even more highly enough of it. It's great. So what would you say is the biggest misconception about someone like you who covers celebrity culture?
I think the biggest misconception is that caring about celebrity culture is vapid or shallow or stupid, because celebrities, they fill a void that has been filled in the past by royalty, by gods, by saints, by Greek mythology. We have always needed to have people that we use as a touchstone to talk to each other about certain topics. And it's the way that we relate to each other. So it's like, I might not talk to my coworker directly about what their values are, but I might talk to them about Kim and Kanye and see what they say, and then I'll suss out their values in that way. So this is what we're doing when we're talking about celebrities. We're figuring out where people stand on certain issues and what they think about certain things, and it's so valuable and it's so interesting and it's so multifaceted. So whenever people are like, why do you care about celebrities? That's so stupid. I'm just like, you're stupid if you don't get it, because it is so important, you know? Like, and then another thing that really bugs me is when people, this was happening a lot this year, when people are like, our celebrities should be like doctors and nurses. And it's like,
no.
Okay, like no, that would be boring. That's not the function that they serve, you know? Like celebrities aren't meant to be the best people in society, because that's boring. Like celebrities are meant to be people who provide a storyline for us to follow and to make sense of the world and make sense of ourselves and make sense of the people we know. So like, yeah, maybe if there was a reality show about doctors and nurses and there was drama and intrigue and conflict, then yeah, they would be celebrities, but you can't do that because of like HIPAA. So
that thing. Wait, I'm so fascinated by this idea, which I don't know why I've never thought of it that way, that like the way you think about certain celebrity culture is indicative of your belief system in a way. And like it's an okay way for us to talk about or get a feel for somebody's ideology without like crossing that inappropriate like political line. That's so cool.
Yeah, exactly. It's the reason why we gossip too. It's just, you know, like I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to talk shit about someone to you who I look down on. And then if you're like, no, I disagree, I'm going to be like, oh, so she's on that side. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's just like a very safe way to sort of get information, I guess.
Yeah, totally. Yes. That's amazing.
And it helps you decide your own values, you know? Like when Kim Kardashian first sort of hit the scene, I was definitely, and I'm very ashamed to say this, one of the like haters who was like, oh, and obviously the Kardashians are super problematic in many ways, but I was one of those people who were like, this is stupid, this is vapid. But then I was like, you know what? I have really strong feelings about slut shaming and about women's reputations. And she's someone who is dealing with like some of the craziest slut shaming since Monica Lewinsky, and she's navigating that and still becoming famous. And that's really interesting. And that is what made me sort of see her, like have some kinship with her and see why she was an interesting person and why her story mattered in the grand scheme of everything, you know? And obviously, like I said, she's done really crappy things too, but yeah.
I feel the internet has such a love-hate relationship with her. Like when the news broke that she was divorcing Kanye, people were like, oh, I'm so happy for Kim, she's free. But it's like the same people were also talking shit about her last week, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And also like, I just don't even really like, I loved Kim and Kanye in their heyday. I was like obsessed with them. And I also was a major Kanye stan forever. But I don't even really find the divorce story that interesting, because now at this point, it's just a story about mental health. And that's a huge topic. And it's just, we're not ever going to know the full story. Mm-hmm. And I think people say really stupid things about him and about, you know, bipolar disorder and everything. And it's just not fun. You know what I mean? It's not like a fun celeb story to me anymore. But yeah, so that one, yeah, it's like, I feel like I wish the best for both of them, and I just hope he's getting like the right treatment and everything. The only thing that is interesting to me about that story now is the way that people still blame Kim for like things that he does. I'm like, we're still literally just looking for the nearest woman to blame for every single thing that ever goes wrong. It's like,
yeah, or they blame Kris Jenner.
Yeah, I'm like, how much power do you think she really? I don't think she really actually is like pulls the strings as much as people say. Like obviously she does a little bit, but I think a lot of the Kardashian machine is beyond their control.
Yeah. Well, on the topic of E, did you see the E! News coverage of the coup?
Of what?
Like
oh no! Yes, it was like a picture of people, and it was like, "This is not our country." Chloe Grace Moretz.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Oh my God, that was so funny. I love that. See, that is a hard thing when you're like a pop culture person, because it's like, how much attention do you give to politics? Because there is such a huge intersection between politics and pop culture now. And you have to decide how you're going to do it through your own lens. Like, even whenever I was like a magazine editor, I had to deal with that a lot too. And there's usually never a right or wrong answer. And that was just hilarious. Like,
It was so good. As somebody who covers celebrity, like, what was that like during the early months of the pandemic when celebrities, like everybody else, kind of went into hiding and didn't really exist in our minds for a while? What was that like? Like, did you have content?
oh, it was the worst. I mean, I just was doing a lot of like throwback stuff. I mean, thankfully Meghan and Harry kept us really busy all year. I also am a presenter on Us Weekly's Royal show, Royally Us, on YouTube. So we talk about them every week, and they have been very active. But I feel like, yeah, it sucked. And something really weird that kept coming up was that people kept saying, oh, now that we have such important things going on, we're going to stop having celebrities. And it's just like, no, we're not. Why would we stop having celebrities? Like, yeah, some people might fall out of favor because of how they're flaunting their wealth, which is definitely happening. Like, people are finally getting mad at Kylie Jenner for like hoarding wealth, which she somehow got away with. It was so weird when, like, in the beginning of her career, people were always so nasty about Kim and so nice about Kylie, and they were like, oh, it's not her fault that she was like raised on camera and blah blah blah. And I'm like, yeah, but like, she's also kind of just slapping her name on really crappy makeup and making $1 billion and never ever doing anything,
and blackfishing.
Yeah, exactly.
And then was called a self-made billionaire or something. And it's like,
right. And like completely
like her first
fudged
car
the
was her
numbers.
mom's Range Rover. Stop.
Yeah. But yeah, it was awful. And still there's no fresh red carpet photos. Like, for my writing jobs, I've been using the same like stock photos of celebrities for almost a year now. It's just, I'm ready for them to come back. I'm ready. And I think I have some predictions for this year, actually, if you want to hear them. I think like one thing that we're going to see is a return of the classic Hollywood showmance, as in, you know, a star and another star who are in a movie together pretending they're in a relationship, which it's been going on forever. But I think now it's going to be even more so because there are even fewer opportunities for press and for junkets and things like that. So I don't think Olivia Wilde and Harry Styles is fake. I don't know, but it's very convenient that this is not only promoting the movie they're working on together, and I love that it's for once a female director and a male star dating. I love it. It's amazing.
And an older woman and a younger man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's great. It's a really fun storyline, but I mean, it's not only promoting their movie, but it's also saving their movie from the sort of negative association with Shia LaBeouf that it had before Harry Styles took the job. And it makes them both look good. And Harry's done showmances before, we know. So like, I think this is something that we're going to see a huge resurgence of. Like, we're supposed to be pretending that Tom Cruise is dating his co-star in the Mission Impossible movie. There's like Ben Affleck and Ana de Armas. I think it's going to be like, this is the only way for them to get attention now. So there's going to be a big resurgence in that. And I think another thing we're going to have a big not resurgence. Well, it is a resurgence, but like stars retouching photos even more than they are, because there's no red carpets anymore. So they can get away with so much more like fictional representation of themselves, which is really a return to form, because there didn't used to be that many red carpet events. It used to be that stars fully controlled their image and they would be airbrushed like crazy if they appeared in magazines. Like, this thing of us getting like HD photos of them on the red carpet is pretty new. Like, that didn't really exist until like the last 10 years. So I think it's, you know, the insane beauty standards are only going to get worse over the next year as lockdowns continue. And I recently saw something on, you know, that account Problematic Fame. Do you guys follow that?
Yeah.
They posted that now Getty is posting retouched images. And Getty is, like, for people who don't know, it's the photo agency that all of the newspapers and magazines use. They're posting images, and it has a little disclaimer that says this has been retouched at the request of this person's team. But
well,
like that,
Kylie Jenner pays paparazzi. Like, have you seen that? Like, they'll show Kylie's paid paparazzi photos next to like the unpaid paparazzi photos, and it's a completely different person. Like,
yeah. So they're retouching, so they're retouching paparazzi photos. They're retouching their red carpet photos. So it's just going to get into a whole nother level of uncanny valley where we just never see what people actually look like. And it's just, nuts.
Oh my God.
On a lighter kind of note, I just want to know, is there like a celebrity that you've met personally that you either had like a huge fangirl type moment, or on the opposite side of that, you're like a totally awkward experience or like a disappointing meeting?
Okay, I have one that is both of those things. It's kind of a crazy story. So I interviewed James Franco when he was promoting this movie. It's called Child of God. It's a really strange movie. It's based on a Cormac McCarthy novel. And I just really wanted to interview James Franco because this was before all that like troubling stuff came out about him. And so I was really excited to go and interview him. It was him and the star of the film because he directed it. So it was a press junket, which means everybody goes in, the reporters go in one by one and interview them. And they're just sitting in a room all day. And it was at the Tribeca Grand, like in the basement. And like I had interviewed like many celebrities by then and never been starstruck. And for some reason, like the minute I saw him, I was like jello. Like I was like a little 8-year-old girl, which was probably what he would have loved.
Oh God.
Terrible. I'm sorry. No, a 16-year-old girl, what you would have loved. But I was like shaking. I was so starstruck by him. And I was not expecting to be that way whatsoever. He just has like a presence. He has a real movie star mystique about him.
He's super handsome.
Yes, he was gorgeous and just had that like crooked smile. And I could not handle it. But then something like it was really a strange interaction because it was him and his star. And I walked in the room with the publicist and him and his star were like laying in an L-shaped booth, and it was a male star. It was an actor. And they were like kind of laying on each other a little bit. Like they were sort of like in like each end of the booth so that like they were sort of reclining toward each other and whispering to each other in a very like intimate way. And the PR was like, "Oh, Molly's here from The Observer." And they just ignored us completely. And she waited another minute and she was like, "Guys, like next interview is here. Molly's here from The Observer." And they were still just whispering together. And then finally they acknowledged me and like the interview started. And so as I'm interviewing them, it was so weird because they were being very flirty and they were just like the actor was gushing over James Franco and being like, "Oh my God, isn't he so amazing? Like, isn't he so perfect? Blah, 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 blah." And I was like, I'm really getting the impression that like these guys are involved somehow. And like, so after the interview, I went back to my editor and I was like, I really don't know what to do because I can't really write this up in an honest way that doesn't acknowledge the fact that they were literally like physically all over each other. They were physically like canoodling when I first walked in and they were beaming, talking about each other. Like, I don't know how to write this in an honest way that doesn't sort of imply that. And I also don't want to imply that because if they are in a couple, I don't want to out them because that's not cool. And so I was just like, I really don't know how to do this story. And I think I ended up just not even writing it. So I thought I was crazy, but I was like, whatever, I just am not going to touch it. So then the next day, the New York Times and Gawker had also, I guess, gone to that same junket, or, well, they wouldn't have done, New York Times wouldn't have gone to a junket, but they had an interview with them later in the day at like a restaurant. And the New York Times wrote in this very coded way that they're living together. They are very intimately friendly with each other. Like the way the New York Times does it with stuff like that is they imply it, and you're supposed to like read between the lines and see that someone, like whatever they're trying to tell you. And then Gawker picked it up and they went the full on, which Gawker always did, like James Franco is trying to get you to think that he's gay with his co-star kind of thing. And then James Franco was able to pick up the Gawker thing and be like, "This is so offensive. How dare you? This is homophobic, blah, 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 blah." So I think, and then he got pressed for his terrible movie that no one else was talking about. So I think maybe what was happening was that they were like queer baiting in a way and trying to get everyone to write that story so that they would get a little more attention on the film. And, or maybe they were in a relationship. Like, I don't know.
Right.
But
That is
it
so
was
weird.
Either way, it was
truly
just bizarre.
Yeah, it was bizarre because the thing is, like, if they were both closeted in a relationship, didn't want the press to know, they wouldn't have been acting the way they were acting in front of me. Like anyone who went into that room and interacted with them would have been like, whoa, like there's something going on with these guys. Like there's a spark between them. Like, especially let alone a reporter would be looking for something like that. So I just have no idea what the hell their goal was and what they were trying to do.
And I feel like their PR rep, like if they were trying to cover that up, like would have like separated them before you even walked in the room.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So I think it was probably a strategy. Either whether they were hooking up or not, I have no idea, but they definitely wanted me and the other reporters to write it up as if they were, so that they could indignantly be like, how dare you say this? This is offensive, blah, blah, blah.
That is so interesting.
It was the weirdest interview. I mean, actually, there's probably been weirder ones, but it was the weirdest celebrity interview I've ever had by far.
Wow.
And I felt so vindicated that the New York Times and Gawker picked up on it too, because, I was like, I'm not crazy. Like, this really is the message that was being put out that I was picking up on.
And you didn't take the bait and you didn't get the backlash. So
right. Because I'm like, either I'm going to get called homophobic for saying this, or I'm going to be accused of outing someone, which I obviously don't want to do because that's horrible. So you
couldn't win. Right.
Yeah. Can't fool me, Franco.
But I saw him in Of Mice and Men with Chris O'Dowd and Leighton Meester. Yeah. I was like front row and I was like, oh my God. It was okay. It wasn't the best. Chris O'Dowd was great. Yeah. But Leighton Meester was not right for the role, and James Franco was like, eh. My mom was not impressed. But yeah. Wow. This has been so much fun. I guess our last thing is just plug yourself. Where can our listeners find you? And do you have any projects on the horizon that we should keep our eyes peeled for?
Yes. So follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Molly Molshine. I'm not that good at Instagram. I really post absolute garbage, cringe on Instagram and Twitter, really. I suck at social media, but definitely follow me.
Great plug.
And subscribe to my podcast, Diva Behavior, on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Also check out, if you like royal family stuff, Us Weekly's Royally Us on YouTube every Wednesday at 10 a.m. I'm on there. And I do have some really cool stuff coming up, and I can't talk about it. I'm sad. Well. So follow me so that you can see what it is, because it is really cool. It's going to be really cool, but it's not like the ink is not dry yet. So I can't say what it is.
Well, we're super excited to see what that is. And thank you again for coming on. This was so fun.
Yeah, thank you
guys.
Yeah.
So fun. Right. I love being a guest. I never do this.
Right? It's weird. You did great.
Thank you. All
right.
I hope I didn't ramble too much.
No, it was perfect.
Perfect. You're made for this.
It's true. Thank you for listening to Meet My Mutual. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, please be sure to like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen, and be sure to tell your friends about us. We welcome you to connect with us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Meet My Mutual. Thank you so much for the support. We'll see you next time on Meet My Mutual.